Hi and welcome. My name is Lawrence Baker and this video is going to be about the two easiest ways of dodging and burning in Photoshop. Let's get started. I created this image using frequency separation. It's a well-known method for smoothing out skin and portrait retouching. But what I need to do now, I need to work destructively with the dodge and burn tools. And this is the problem with the dodge and burn tools inside of Photoshop. They only work destructively in most normal circumstances. So I need to create this merged visible layer. I come up to Layer, Merge Visible, Shift, Command and Control E. The problem with this is I lose all my layers completely. I've merged them all down. So Command and Control Z. The best method is keyboard shortcut only. It's Command and Control, Alt Option, Shift E to create a merged visible layer. Now, if it doesn't work for you in another context, let's say, all you have to do is create a blank layer first and then do Command and Control, Alt Option, Shift E. Anyway, I'm going to rename this layer DB and Destructive. Right. The reason I say destructive because the dodge and burn tools only work on an image. You cannot do it on a blank layer. So let's get going. I'm on the dodge tool, which looks like a pin. Dodge means to brighten. The other tool, I'll just go Shift and O to go through these now, is the burn tool, which is the hand symbol. Dodge and burn, the reason they're named as such, it goes right back to the darkroom days and working with chemicals and blocking things out. But anyway, dodge will brighten, burn will darken. Simple as that. So before I go any further, I'm going to set up both the dodge and burn tools and show you a way of working quickly. So I'm on the hand symbol, which means the burn tool. I'm on midtones. I'm on exposure of 30%. I could work on the shadows and highlights, but midtones will be most of the work will be done with midtones. Now, if you want to change that quickly, Shift and plus or Shift and equals on your keyboard and Shift and minus will move through them forwards and backwards. Same for exposure. I don't play with the drop down. What I do is either just type 4 for 40, 5 for 50. If you want 2.5 in quick succession will give you 25%. 30% is quite a good starting place. It just really means the strength of, of what you're doing, basically. The stronger the effect, the higher the number. The airbrush option, let me show it to you. If you click and press down, I'm on a Wacom tablet, it will just keep making stuff darker. So it's like spraying with an aerosol can, simple as. Command or Control Z to get rid of that. So you don't need that on most of the time, especially for portrait retouching. Protect tones. This is quite important and you must have it ticked, especially when you're working on faces. It won't shift or won't clip the blacks or the highlights, so you won't get blown out highlights. It says minimize clipping in shadows and highlights and keeps colors from shifting hue. So keep it ticked. This is for tablet users. It means I can control the size of the brush using pressure because we are using a brush here and you need to check it's on 0% hardness. You can use obviously a higher hardness, but for an image like this, you wouldn't because you get sort of hard transitions. So that's the burn tool. Shift and O, you're going past the saturation tool. Shift and O again. It's on highlights. Shift and minus, we now know, will take me to midtones. 3 for 30% exposure. Protect tones is on, that's pressure for size. So both those tools are set up exactly the same. Now, this is a quick way of working. When you're on the dodge tool now, which is to brighten, I want to contour his cheeks. So if I go over it twice there and twice there, all I have to do now is press the Alt Option key, keep it pressed, and I am now using the opposite tool. So I'm actually using the burn tool. So 1, 2, 1, 2. So I've now sort of giving his cheeks some contouring. A bit too much. I've done it quite high because I'd normally start off on about 10%. And as you keep painting down, you're kind of laying down more of the burn or dodge. So Alt Option key pressed, depending on what you're on, it will swap between either or tool. So if you're on the dodge tool, it will go to the burn tool. If you're on the burn tool, it will go to the dodge tool. The brush doesn't change. Nothing changes on the screen. but it does work. So it's a quick way of working. Now I need to work on these eyes. Z for zoom, or Z for zoom. And I've got scrubby zoom on. I think it's on by default. Click and drag to the bottom right, and you can zoom right in on his eyes. Now I actually want to be on just the dodge tool, and I'm not going to use Alt Option to flick between, because I'm going to change the dodge tool, because I'm going to brighten up the highlights in his eye. O, I'm on the dodge tool. Make the brush smaller, left hand square bracket key going now. Highlights, Shift and plus will change it to highlights. 30 is about right. I might, yeah, 30 is about right. Of course, you can always go backwards. I often have my history panel open. I'm going to open it now so I can work, you know, work quickly by moving backwards if I necessarily need to do it. So that's brightening up those bits there. And probably that bit there as well. That's in the way slightly of the panel, but that's not a problem. Now, I'm going to move the eye away there. Keep the space bar pressed, and you've got the hand tool, we can move stuff around. Now, to work on the rest of his eye, because there's hardly any detail here, I've got to be careful, but I'm going to take it back down to midtones. I could try one on shadows and one on highlights. I'm playing around myself to a certain extent. 30%, maybe I'll go to 4 for 40%. So I am having quite a pronounced effect there because I'm working on the shadows. Don't touch the pupil and don't go to right to the edge of the eye, because every eye has a slight dark ring around it. So that's about right. Probably too much, but let's go ahead and do it. As I said, square bracket keys will make the brush larger and smaller. Left to make it smaller, right to make it larger. So Command or Control 0 to fit on screen. You could go up to View, Fit on screen, but Command or Control 0 is your friend. Right, it looks a bit too much. I realise that, and I should have used midtones, but that shows you the difference. So when I've worked on the shadows there and over brightened his eyes slightly. Now maybe I would do the forehead now, and I would go Shift and O to go to the burn tool, and I put exposure right down low, and I probably want it on 5, so that's 0.5, 0.5. So I'm on 5% exposure. And obviously use the drop down if you want to. I'm on midtones. I'm just going to darken his forehead down a bit. And the shiny bits there, I'm probably going to go up to 10. Yeah, just get rid of the shiny bits, because you don't want to make it too obvious. Now, I probably would do his lips as well. Z on the keyboard, scrubby zoom on in the options bar, drag to the bottom right. And I would probably do that highlight there. I need to be on the dodge tool, Shift and O, take them to the dodge tool. I'll probably do that bright bit with highlights. Let's have a go at it. Shift and minus twice or once to get to highlights. And I'll probably just, too much. Command and Control Z. Exposure was too high. Let's set it on 10. I should set it on 5 really, but quickly go over it. Then Shift and plus to go to midtones, or Shift and minus, whatever, and make sure I'm on about 30 there, and just brighten up his lips a little bit there, make him look a bit better. There's a lot more I could do to this face. Command and Control 0, and that's what I've done. It is destructive, but once you understand how to use these tools on and off, it's over the top. But once you understand how to go down to low exposures and work carefully, because every time you lay down something, it's like a flow from a brush, so you learn to work very lightly, and it is a great way of dodging and burning. All the other methods you get shown with high pass filters and apply image or adjustment layers, especially a curves adjustment layer, you're sort of sticking to one exposure. So I like this method. These tools are designed to do this, but they're destructive. I'm now going to show you the semi non-destructive method. I say semi because it's not totally non-destructive. Now, without going into frequency separation in great detail, is that I work below the texture layer because you preserve the texture. And if I turn that paint layer off, you see what I've done. I've sort of evened out the colours on his face. I slightly flattened his face off, so I want to put a bit of contouring back. So I work underneath the texture layer to preserve the texture. Right, so this video is not about frequency separation. As I said, link above and down below. Right, new layer, Command and Control, Shift N. Call it, I'll put my pen down, DB. I'm going to call it Overlay. You'll see why in a minute. Pick my pen back up. Mode or blend mode should be on overlay, and overlay down to hard mix or contrast modes, and 50% grey will be transparent. So I'm going to tick fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray, because the contrast modes 50% gray is a neutral color. Okay. I could have done that retrospectively and gone, just created the layer and go edit, fill, and picked 50% grey, etc. Notice my panel here. I'm also set my brush up, or my colour up, I should say, really, to 50% grey. HSB is the quickest method. Tick on B and put 50 in there, and that's 50% grey. Because there's a way of correcting things using the brush. Right, let's get going. Now, I am going to work quickly this time. I'm going to check I've got everything set up at midtones and 30%. So Shift and O to go to the burn tool. It's on 10%, 3 on my keyboard, 30%, because I'm going to use that Alt Option method to flick between the two. So I'm on the burn tool. Let's go underneath these cheekbones now and just paint a couple of times like that. A couple of times like that. You know how to dodge and burn now. Alt or Option key press. I'm on the dodge tool now. Couple of times under there. Zoom in on his eyes quickly. Shift and O, I'll probably go to the dodge tool itself. Shift and plus to go on to highlights. 30% is on. That'll do me for now. I am rushing. Brighten up those bits. Shift and minus, go back to midtones. 30% will be all right. I'm not going to use shadows this time. I'm going to stay with midtones and just do it that way there. And it's not over the top. That's me pressing the right mouse key there. And I'm not going to do any more, because dodging and burning is an artistic thing you pick up as you go along. You understand where the light's shining, etc. Command and Control 0. So I've done that to his face like that. Now, if I Alt or Option click on the eyeball there, it will isolate that layer. That's what I've done. Now, if I didn't like it and wanted to change things, with the brush tool, press B on 100% opacity and 100% flow on a reasonably soft brush, I can actually paint that all out and get rid of it. Command and Control Z to bring it back. You could even select areas of it and blur them together. You can see how this is kind of non-destructive in some ways, but not properly non-destructive. So you can work like this. There's nothing wrong with this method, but the big thing about it is you can change it to soft light, the layer blend mode, and that will soften off everything. None of the other contrast modes are going to work. Hard light will look awful. If you want that Martian look, you know how to do it now. And obviously hard mix and all those, they just don't work. So it's overlay and soft light. Overlay is more punchier. Soft light, as it sounds, is softer. So it's softened off the effect. That's not that bad. So that's one of the big advantages of working with this layer filled with 50% grey and using the dodge and burn tools. As I said, I will have a link to a portrait retouch I did with this image and show you how to use frequency separation. But my method is slightly different because I like to paint below the texture layer. Check out the video above or below. That's it, guys. Thanks very much.